Hi everyone, and welcome back to English for You. I'm Pat.
And I'm Kai.
So today we're looking at the second day of our article about the story of the Statue of Liberty. So what did we learn yesterday?
So yesterday we talked about where it is. The Statue of Liberty is in New York, New York Harbor specifically. It's been there for about 130 years. Where did it come from?
Well, we found out that it was designed to celebrate and honor the friendship between France and the US, and also to celebrate the end of slavery at the end of the American Civil War, and which is why there are broken shackles at its feet to kind of show, okay, slavery's over, slaves are free, chains are broken, and so on.
There's also, another thing about the design is the poem. There are some words from a poem by Emma Lazarus, who was working to help immigrants and refugees. And so the poem that she wrote is called The New Colossus, and she called the statue the mother of exiles.
Right. And because of that, it's kind of the statue's become a symbol for welcoming immigrants kind of thing, as well as the end of slavery. Sadly, Emma Lazarus passed away before the poem was finished, but you can still kind of hear her words, right?
Yeah, and they're very famous. And the first lines of the poem are, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." They're still at
the statue, yeah. And I guess people, I think, like, I'd heard those lines.
Yeah.
You know, I think they're pretty famous.
I think they're about as well known as maybe the very beginning of the Constitution. We the people in order to form a more perfect union, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, or like the Gettysburg Address, you know, four score and
7
years ago. Yeah, everybody knows how it starts.
Yes. How it ends?
Yeah, it goes on. Yeah. Okay. So over the years, the statue has become a symbol of freedom for immigrants to the US. Many of them came from Europe, and it was one of the sights they saw there. One of the first things they see. There's Ellis Island, which is like an immigration center on another island next to the statue in New York Harbor. But is the US still as friendly to immigrants? Let's read through day 2 and find out more.
Okay.
Reading.
The story of the Statue of Liberty, a modern colossus. Even today, Lazarus's poem is still relevant to public discussions happening in the U.S. Americans have a complicated relationship with immigration. While most of the country's population originally came from other countries, immigrants haven't always been warmly welcomed. In fact, just before Lazarus wrote her poem, the government passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, restricting immigration from China. Today, the government is attempting similar measures toward immigrants from other parts of Asia, South and Central America, and Africa. People who see immigrants as valuable to American society often point to the new Colossus to encourage a welcoming attitude. When a reporter mentioned the poem to a top U.S. immigration official, he replied by saying some lines should be revised. He wanted them to express that these tired and poor people shouldn't depend on the government for help. The debate over immigration rages on, but many Americans still look to Lady Liberty as a guiding light for what to do during difficult times. Under her lamp, the U.S. could truly become a place of true freedom and opportunity.
So following right on from that question, the article begins by saying, even today, Lazarus's poem is still relevant to public discussions happening in the U.S. So relevant is an adjective. It's really a useful word, I think, and it means connected to the topic being talked about or thought about, depending on if it's out loud or not. It's similar to related, this word.
Yeah, and it's also, I guess there's also got the meaning of important, right? It's still an important thing.
Yes.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's still like definitely connected to it in a way that is still meaningful. Okay, we also said it's relevant to public discussions. A discussion is the process of talking about something in order to exchange ideas, to come to a conclusion, or to make a decision.
Yeah.
So a discussion is more serious than a simple chat.
Definitely.
You know, you're not just talking about it for no real reason. You're kind of really bringing up all the issues in order to come to a proper conclusion about what's going on. For example, we could say there have been discussions about whether to make big changes to the way students are taught in schools. So these aren't just people throwing around some ideas for fun. It's like, no, we're seriously discussing whether things need to change.
Yeah.
And discuss is the verb form of discussion.
Yeah. The article continues by saying Americans have a complicated relationship with immigration. Yeah, so we talked about immigrants. That's the noun. Immigration is the noun for what immigrants are doing. And complicated means not simple.
Yeah, it's something that's not easy to explain or understand for whatever reason. It's got a lot of different details and kind of facets, a lot of different...
A lot of threads going into it.
Yeah, it's not just a simple kind of A to B relationship. It's like... And everything is complicated, really. There's very few things that are simple.
True.
Okay, so why is it complicated? Let's get into that with the next part of the article, saying, while most of the country's population originally came from other countries, immigrants haven't always been warmly welcomed. So, yeah, I think that is part of the idea why the US is associated with welcoming immigration, because so many people came from Europe, came from Asia, came from all over.
From Africa.
Yeah, exactly. South America.
They came whether they had a choice or not.
That's
but
true.
They all came from a different place.
Yeah.
We have, of
Native
course,
Americans.
indigenous people, Native Americans who have been there thousands and thousands and thousands of years. But they also, a lot of them came from other parts of the world when, there was more ice, less ice, all of that. And so the idea that Americans have so much trouble with the idea of immigration and immigrants and what they do, it's really a current matter.
Because if people object to it now, you say, well, what if people had objected to it like a couple of hundred years ago? You wouldn't be living here. You'd be stuck in Britain or France or Africa or something like that. Okay, so where do we take this idea? And we say that immigrants haven't always been warmly welcomed. We've got an example of that.
Yeah, the article continues by telling us, in fact, just before Lazarus wrote her poem, the government passed the Chinese Exclusion Act restricting immigration from China.
Okay.
Yeah, so at that time, there was a lot of building to connect the East Coast and the West Coast of the U.S. with trains.
Right.
And a lot of the workers on these train track construction gangs were Chinese immigrants.
Okay.
But the government passed the Chinese Exclusion Act saying no more.
Yeah.
And exclusion is it's a noun, and it means to leave someone out of something, or more specifically, intentionally stop them. So stop them from doing something, stop them from going somewhere. So in this case, they were prevented. They were stopped from coming into the U.S.
Yeah, just kind of like either you can't get off the boat or we're going to turn around and send you right back, that kind of thing, something like that. It said this act, so it's an act of government, which is why we've got the capital letters to it. It restricted immigration from China. To restrict is to limit something in size, in its freedom, or in its extent. Restrict can also mean to remove something's freedom, something like that. So I think basically what was happening, I don't think they were saying like were they saying there can be no immigrants, or were they saying there can only be like if you're bringing a company you can do it?
You're asking me some
history questions. We're not
10th
sure.
grade history, but I think it was restricted in that large numbers were not allowed, and also people who were already there were not kicked out, but it was saying you can only bring in people maybe for working at your business or something, which is a reason that
jobs.
There are a lot of Chinese restaurants all around the U.S.
Yeah, we actually...
It's related to this.
Yeah, we covered that in a 4U article a few months back, in fact, about the restaurants. But yeah, so here's a sentence for restrict. Since I don't have a car or scooter, I'm restricted to public transportation taxis and walking. So I don't have the freedom to go to just drive anywhere. I have to figure out how I'm going to get there in a taxi or a bus or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the past. What about modern day?
Well, the article tells us that today the government is attempting similar measures toward immigrants from other parts of Asia, South and Central America, and Africa.
Yeah, and in fact, if some law, which was back in April, and we're recording this, we record early, we're recording in April, there was even talk about complete block on all immigration.
Yes, and they're trying to use the COVID-19 as an excuse, but it's really just continuing a pattern that the current government under Donald Trump has been trying to carry out since he took office.
And before, yes.
And before, it's true.
Right.
It's as much as it pains me to say, it's not all his fault.
No, the
but
party
a lot of it
he's
is.
in. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we now kind of look at some of the sides of the argument, the other side in this case. People who see immigrants as valuable to American society often point to the new Colossus, though that's the poem, to encourage a welcoming attitude, saying, look, this is how we are supposed to be. This poem was written to show our spirit. This is what we've got to do.
Right.
So here we've got a couple of words to look at. We've got the adjective valuable. Something that is valuable has value. And this could be like money value, like it's worth a lot of money. It's a house that costs $5 million or something. But valuable can also mean it provides an important service. It enriches lives. It improves culture. It kind of makes things better. It brings a value of its own.
Like I think my friendships are valuable.
Yeah, because they improve your life. They improve your quality of life, that kind of thing. And we say something similar in our example sentence. All art is valuable as it provides beauty or encourages other people to think.
Yeah. One of the other words we had was attitude, a noun, and it's the way you think about something. Your attitude about something or toward something often shows in your behavior toward it. So the example we have is, although I was angry at my friend for canceling our plans, when he told me the reason, my attitude changed. So maybe he had a really good excuse. His dog died, and so now I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry I was angry. You're having a bad day.
Right, yes. And
my
of course,
attitude should be more forgiving.
Yeah, the way you behave towards him will completely change.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so and this poem, this new Colossus, was brought up in a discussion that happened at some point in the recent past.
Yes, August
Okay.
2019.
Okay, so last year, we see in the article that when a reporter mentioned the poem to a top US immigration official, he replied by saying some lines should be revised, which sounds really bad.
What a nerve.
Yeah, like saying, oh, forget our history and our shared values as a country and a culture.
Yeah.
Let's just change that,
What it shows is a bad attitude.
Yeah, it certainly does. It really does. So first we're going to look at the verb to mention. So a reporter mentions this poem. To mention something is to refer to something, usually in speech, but it could be in writing. And it's generally briefly rather than in great detail. So we're saying the reporter didn't read the entire poem, but the reporter mentioned the poem, maybe mentioned the first line, mentioned the author, just kind of gave a few brief details so that everybody knows what we're talking about without going into great detail about what the poem was or all the words of the poem. So if you're missing out some details about something, you could just say, oh, I mentioned it, but we didn't discuss it, something like that. For example, Barry mentioned he was having a party, but he didn't tell me when, where, or why.
Oh, no.
So he just said, I'm having a party sometime. Like, oh, great. And that's it.
Sounds like you're not invited.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yes, I'm sure if I was invited, he would have told me all of that.
Yeah. Or mention also has to do with there are a lot of things that we both already know. So if I mention it, I know that you know enough.
Right. You don't need to explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's a little bit of a different read on mention. One of the other words we have in this sentence is revise. It's a verb, which means to make changes, usually small changes. So in our work, we do a lot of revising. We will write something and then get some feedback and change it a little bit to make more sense or to make a better point. And you can also revise any kind of thing. We talked about designers yesterday. If you have a design for something, maybe you have to revise it. something that you were going to use to construct your project is not available. Time to revise my plan.
Yeah.
Use a different material.
Yeah, revising plans is good. Like you maybe made a meeting with somebody and, I can't make it today. We need to revise our plans. We'll have a meeting on a different day.
Yeah, that too. So the example I have is that this part of the story is not clear, so you should revise it. Yeah, not a big change, just a little change.
There is another meaning of the word revise, by the way, which is what you do before exams.
Very British.
Yeah, I get. What do you say?
Study.
You say just study.
Or review.
Okay. Yeah, in Britain, we would say you revise for an exam, which means you read over all your notes, you check your books, you make sure you understand the subject well so that you can answer exam questions about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did this immigration official want to revise the lines of the poem? The article says he wanted them to express that these tired and poor people shouldn't depend on the government for help. So,
Yeah.
Well, first let's look at depend on to make sure you guys understand what we're talking about here. If you depend on something, you need that thing in order to complete a task, to succeed in some manner, or even to live. You might, for example, animals depend, pets depend on us to feed them. Children depend on us to provide food and shelter and clothes and all the rest. They can't provide it for themselves. They need somebody else to get it to them, so they depend on that person.
Yeah. I also, in a less serious manner, might depend on the bus to get me to work on time.
Sure.
I know that it always comes every 5 minutes. If it doesn't come every 5 minutes, oops.
Yep.
Something's gone
I can't depend on this bus.
Yes.
So you got some history about what actually happened here.
Yes, so I looked it up. I was a little curious. Like I said, it was August last year, August 2019. And when the reporter asked him, he actually did have a little bit of a revised version of the lines of the poem already. He said, "Give me your tired and your poor, who can stand on their own 2 feet and who will not become a public charge." So a public charge means a responsibility of the government or responsibility of all of the people of a country, saying they won't be a burden because they need assistance.
Yeah.
But some things about this idea sound good. Obviously,
bring in skilled immigrants who can improve the country with their knowledge and abilities.
Right.
Right.
And this sounds good. And of course, you want people to be able to participate and contribute in any society they live in. But unfortunately, it's this kind of language and this kind of idea, especially in American politics right now, really is just used to exclude people. And part of the original idea of the poem, and something that's very important in general, is that when you're poor, when you're tired, you need help. And getting help is not a bad thing. It shouldn't be something to be ashamed of. It shouldn't be a shameful thing. Right. And that's
everyone could go through or be in that situation.
Exactly. Lives change all the time. So he said the line should be revised, and he immediately offered a revision, which I think is, like I said, quite a nerve on that guy.
Yeah, exactly. So, and this hasn't come. We've said there are discussions about it, but we haven't really got an easy answer.
No, and in fact, as the article says, the debate over immigration rages on, but many Americans still look to Lady Liberty as a guiding light for what to do during difficult times. So this sentence has a lot going on.
Yeah, we've got a few words and phrases here.
Yeah, and so the first one is our pocket phrase go, rage on. So let's go to our co-teacher for a little explanation.
Pocket phrase go!
最近我们自己家迷上了玩那个什么Switch 啦，跟你说那个什么大乱斗有够好玩，有够好玩，我们全家人激烈的交战，玩了一个晚上。 The battle raged on， 战斗还在激烈的持续着啦。花妈要跟着我的卡比跟你们拼了啦。Rage 这个字呢，就是生气的意思咯。Rage on 表示持续着，而且是怎么样？是很激烈的持续着哦。这个呢，我们就可以用来修饰战斗啦、战争啦、吵架哦，完全没有要冷静，还是很火热。Rage on 就是激烈的持续咯。
Okay, welcome back. So that was the phrase rage on. Another phrasal verb in that sentence was look to. Americans look to Lady Liberty as a guiding light. If you look to someone, you hope to get help, advice, or guidance, or something like that from someone or something. We can also use look to mean kind of direct your thoughts to a particular subject, like look to the future. But here we're saying you look to somebody like it's almost the same as depend on. I rely on that person. I want that person to help me.
Yeah.
Again, the example of pets and kids. Kids look to their parents to provide them with food, to give them advice. Maybe even I still might look to my parents for certain things. I would look to my dad for medical advice because he's a doctor, that sort of thing. He's the person I would get help and advice and guidance from.
Yeah. So one of the other things that we have going on in this sentence is our grammar point, which is a phrase which is acting like a noun. In this sentence, you could make the phrase longer and say, many Americans still look to Lady Liberty as a guiding light for what they should do, where they means Americans. So you can also put in different question words like who, where, when, how, which, as well as different verbs after to. So as an example, I looked at the map to see where to go, which can also be said as I looked at the map to see where I should go.
Okay, so it's a bit of word replacement kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so what it's saying here is that Americans are saying, Lady Liberty, whether it's the actual statue or the ideas the statue represents with the poem and everything, this should be, guiding our kind of national policy. This should be our attitude, to use one of the other words, towards what we're doing.
Yes.
And the article concludes with that, under her lamp, the US could truly become a place of true freedom and opportunity. So if everybody kind of follows that idea, that attitude, then the US should be truly free for everybody.
Right. The American dream, as we discussed, could be possible.
Yeah, available to all.
People.
Exactly. Now, we use lamp here. Of course, a lamp is just like a small light source kind of thing. And this relates to the metaphor of guiding light from that sentence, the previous sentence. Lady Liberty is a guiding light, so they look to her lamp. So she's the source of this freedom, the source of this attitude. And of course, the Statue of Liberty does have a torch.
She does.
So it's kind of a metaphor shown in the statue.
A visual metaphor,
right.
As well as a...
Like, here is the light. Come to the light kind of thing. Follow this way.
Yeah.
All right, that brings us to the end of the article, so let's go to today's For You Chat question.
For You Chat.
All right, today's For You Chat question relates to immigrants not in the U.S., but in Taiwan. It says, how do immigrants affect society in Taiwan? What do people here think about immigration?
Okay, well, we mentioned earlier that the two of us are immigrants, and we're here basically to teach English by and large. Whether we do it in a written way or in a teaching way, that was probably what brought us here first. So in some cases, immigrants affect society by bringing our particular skills. We're teaching English, we're sharing our culture, we're sharing our understanding of the language. And I think in general, people in Taiwan approve of that. I've got the feeling that people here don't feel as happy about some Southeast Asians or people from Africa or the Middle East coming to do stuff. I get the feeling that unless you're an English teacher as an immigrant, you may be looked down on a bit and classed as a sort of a lower part of society.
I think so. Perhaps because the value of English in the world as a whole is seen very highly. But even though the services, a lot of manual laborers or Southeast Asian, a lot of them are caregivers.
Yep.
The service they're providing is so important.
Really important.
Like taking care of old people or
kids,
tons of other
looking
skills.
after houses.
Yeah.
Just doing work.
People don't think of this as very valuable because it doesn't have the international prestige and respect that English does.
Yeah, but of course, if they weren't doing it, then it wouldn't get done, or some local who maybe didn't want to would have to do it. So, yeah, it's a complicated issue, and I think it reflects a lot of the rest of the world. There always seems to be, we want some immigrants, but not every immigrant.
Yeah.
And every country is dealing with that to a greater or lesser degree.
Yeah, they all, I think perhaps just part of being a human is that this balance is always very hard to find.
Yeah, I mean, the UK has the same thing with Brexit. You know, they're trying to block certain immigrants, but they also want skilled people to come and continue to improve the country in different ways. So it's a very difficult subject, that is for sure. Okay, that is all the time we've got for today. Thanks for listening, everybody. For English for You, I'm Pat.
And I'm Kai.
We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Story of the Statue of Liberty, a Modern Colossus. Even today, Lazarus's poem is still relevant to public discussions happening in the U.S. Americans have a complicated relationship with immigration. While most of the country's population originally came from other countries, immigrants haven't always been warmly welcomed. In fact, just before Lazarus wrote her poem, the government passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, restricting immigration from China. Today, the government is attempting similar measures toward immigrants from other parts of Asia, South and Central America, and Africa. People who see immigrants as valuable to American society often point to the new Colossus to encourage a welcoming attitude. When a reporter mentioned the poem to a top U.S. immigration official, he replied by saying some lines should be revised. He wanted them to express that these tired and poor people shouldn't depend on the government for help. The debate over immigration rages on, but many Americans still look to Lady Liberty as a guiding light for what to do during difficult times. Under her lamp, the U.S. could truly become a place of true freedom and opportunity.
Vocabulary Review.
Discussion. Evan had a long discussion with his parents about how he was going to pay for college. Restrict. At our school, class sizes are restricted to 20 students or fewer. Valuable. Emma's experience in caring for children proved to be valuable when she became a teacher. Attitude. Jason has quite a negative attitude about living in this city, so I think he's going to move soon. Mention. The students thought they didn't have homework because the teacher forgot to mention it during class. Revise. This textbook has old words that we don't use anymore, so let's revise it to make it easier to understand.
智慧小补帖
Relevant. Complicated. Exclusion.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net